You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program where we break down all the wild and woolly and volatile movements on the other side of the fence, outside of our standard domain and purview in the realm of listed U.S. options. We go abroad and we go above and beyond, OTC, international, you name it, to explore what's going on in the world of crypto trading. Could be Bitcoin Cash, it could be Bitcoin itself, could be Litecoin, could be ETH, could be the options therein and the futures, all sorts of good stuff, the term structure, the skew, all that good stuff. We break it all down for you here every week on the Crypto Rundown. My name is Mark Longo from the brand spanking new theoptionsinsider.com. Hope you're enjoying all the tweaks that have gone on over there. And, of course, however you listen, including live today, Monday, 1:30 p.m. Central, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, via the Mixlers or after the fact on the podcast. Make sure you hit us up with questions, comments, insights. We rely on you guys to let us know what you're looking for, what you're trading, what you're interested in, so we can help fine-tune the show. So the more questions and comments and insights, and we're already getting deluge, but we always want more. We're hungry. We're greedy in that sense. Keep them coming. You know how to hit us up, theoptionsinsider.com. Questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Add options on Twitter and on StockTwits and at all those good outlets. They all get to us. Carrier pigeon. You can walk by the studio here, drop off a letter at the front desk. Whatever you feel like doing, as long as it gets to us. We do love to hear from you guys. And joining me once again on the old program, he hasn't been on in a little while, but let's see. I believe he's joining us now, Mr. Bill Uliveri from Cenacle Capital Management by way of Athena Trade Chicago. Mr. Bill, are you there, sir?
I'm going to do my very best despite technology issues.
We're going to keep on rolling with a little bit of the old Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown segment. Of course, a lot of interesting things going on in the world of crypto these days. Let's start, like the name says, in the Bitcoin world. And, you know, it's an interesting one. Coming into earlier this morning when we were looking at starting to prep for the show, we saw Bitcoin off about over 1,000 handles at one point there from where we were this time last week. You know, it was at about a little bit shy at 10,600, about 10,590 out there. So, of course, well off where we were on our last show. It's dropped actually over 1,400 just in the last 24 hours or so. So, just a bad bit of time. I think you can call it quite safely bullish exhaustion out there, as well as a few other things out there in the crypto markets. Of course, the sell-off really started turning and really started kicking off in earnest last week with the testimony from the Fed chief talking about Facebook's cryptocurrency and some of the other fun issues going on therein. Once that started happening, I think it was at around 13,000 or close to it when he started talking. And once that started happening, pretty much the floodgates were open to the downside. It was look out below, and we sold off quite a bit. And, of course, even breaking through the 10,000 handle recently, 9,900 and change, somewhere in that level, before recovering a bit, getting back up to where we were at the beginning of the show or close to it, 10,590. In fact, coming to Showtime, it had actually rallied a little bit more. It was at about 10,763. Coming into Showtime now. So a little bit of that coming back. So not quite at the nadir of where it was just a few hours ago. Not quite 1,000 handles lower, but pretty close. So it's been a turbulent, a volatile period out there for all things crypto. Meanwhile, though, let's break it down here as we're seeing what's going on. Like you mentioned, the testimony really kind of just set things off, and it never really seemed to recover from this time, or from that testimony this time last week. Looking at what we're seeing out here right now, the concerns, obviously, for a lot of the technical things are to the downside, and 9,500 seems to be the level that a lot of people are kind of focusing on. At least they were when it was threatening that level not too long ago. And, of course, we bounced off that since, so hopefully that means we're going to be safe here for the foreseeable. Effectively, it has been a bear market here for all things crypto. Less for the last few hours. If you look at just the last few hours, then you know that it actually isn't too bad. But on hindsight, over the course of the past week, you'll know that, yeah, things have been, shall we say, a little rough out there. Let's move on to what we're seeing out here in the volatility. 30-day realized. Remember, we like to look at realized volatility here on the show, listeners. Not implied. Implied has its own issues, but realized is where we're looking these days because it just helps. It helps quite a bit to get people going here on the old show here. Yeah, realized last show, as you recall, listeners, we've been north of 100 for a little while here. In fact, last show it was about 125. And this show now we're down to about 88%, so well shy of the triple-digit level. And still watching things here. So vol is moving, shaking. But again, that's 30-day realized, so quite a bit of a time frame there. Keep in mind. We could talk implied. I think we're going to get into that in a little bit when we talk term structure and all of that good stuff. But in general, it has been a fascinating time to watch the volatility out there. Let's talk a little bit of volume. What's been going on out there on Deribit? Deribit has had a few active days. Ironically, it seems like show days are some of the most active out there because, and those, of course, are the days when it's hard for us to get the total volume until after the show is done, so we don't get to peer into the looking glass on those days. And last week, our show day was July 8th, and about 60 million, so a pretty active day there in the crypto land. The 9th, July 9th, was the biggest day of the last week, though, with 70 million. All right, let's see if the fourth time is the charm. Mr. Bill Uliveri, are you joining us, sir?
I'm going to do my very best despite technology issues.
There he is. Oh, the magic of technology. It's a wonderful thing, is it not?
I'm considerably underwhelmed by technology, Mark, to be honest with you.
Well, it has its up days and its down days. I was going to ask you, as I have been with all of our guests today on this great national holiday of Prime Day. If you've done any Prime Day shopping, sir, to kick things off, but it sounds like nothing's working over there, so I don't know if you can even get on Amazon right now, sir.
Well, I can assure you that Mrs. Uliveri is spending some time at the kitchen table actively buying things that we need on the Prime Days. Yes, we're all over that.
There you go. So are you joining us from the Cenacle HQ, or are you joining us from Athena Trade Chicago? Where are you beaming in from today, sir?
Yeah, I'm at the co-working space, Athena Trade, right across from the Merchandise Mart, and working, wirelessly with cell phones today. So I'm a little bit, your typical remote sometimes when I come downtown, and I'm just excited to be a part of today's show, Mark.
Well, catch us up. It's been about a month since we checked in with you over there. It's been, I think, fair to say, a turbulent month out here in all things crypto, rallying up to 13,000, 14,000, selling off a bit. Powell comes along, crushes it, sells it off even more, back down through the 10,000 handle ever so briefly, now back coming to Showtime at about 10,700 or so. Catch us up. What's the last month been like over there in that co-working, co-trading space around crypto? Has it been hot and heavy? What are the folks up to? What's been the scuttlebutt over there, sir?
Well, I think the scuttlebutt, like you said, Mark, was the fact that Bitcoin from the end of February, even actually part of April, from April forward when we kind of broke out above that 4,700 area, that it rallied hard and it rallied fast. Again, everybody brings with them their own view of technical analysis and what it means and support and resistance levels. We're always commenting, during our lunch breaks and when we're spending time together in the co-working space, interesting stories and price levels that are discussed on crypto Twitter, right? Anybody that, is following cryptocurrency has to be on Twitter. But I would say, again, from my old school kind of perspective, everything above 12,500 and on up is definitely, if you looked at cryptocurrency and you looked at Bitcoin through the eyes of like Bollinger Bands and your typical kind of standard distribution, we were definitely outside the bands there, right? We really were overbought on a weekly and a daily basis. And so I'm kind of looking for more of the middling, back into the 9,200, 95 area in the middle of the range, and maybe even down to 6,000, 7,000, if we get a decent pullback. So I think, technically, we had this hard, sharp breakout, and each high since then, like in the last week or two, has been a lower high. And the volume really hasn't been spectacular either. I mean, we definitely saw the higher volumes a couple years ago, but, good stuff, interesting projects, again, come through our doors every week. We're having some great presentations, and honestly, that's just really part of what it is that we're so new in the space that to see how people are applying the tools of cryptocurrency and distributed blockchain technology continues to inspire everybody who's, a part of what we're doing here at Athena Trade.
Yeah, your point about the volume was a good one. I was just hitting on that when you joined us, how we look at the options, obviously, here, as well as, of course, all the different products out there. But from an options perspective, over there on Deribit and some of the other leading platforms, the big day was, of course, the 8th, or the 9th with 70 million, 60 million on the 8th. And then other than that, it's been kind of light, like every 30 million or less, which is kind of par for the course these days. So despite the fact that it's been rocking and rolling, we haven't seen a ton of options lighting things up. Before we keep rolling, Bill, I'm just curious, you kind of mentioned your thoughts over there from a technical perspective. Was there kind of a viewpoint in the room and in the crew that came through there from a trading and crypto perspective? Were they, when it was rallying north to 14,000 or close to it, were they feeling the rush? Were they buying into that as this was kind of the next new level? Or were they maybe thinking it was overdone? Or maybe vice versa, now that it's sold off a bit? Are they bullish? Are they buying in? Have you been able to deduce a general trend from the people you're interacting with there, that they're leaning one way or the other? Or are they kind of all over the place like in pretty much any other market?
Yeah, I would say, Mark, that, when you and I were on the trading floor, you had your bulls, you had your bears in terms of price action. You had people who were long volatility and short volatility on the other side. So during the day, I mean, we always had this divergent conversation about, the market's great, the market sucks. The volatility stinks, it's too low, it's too high. Really you got like a lot of different opinions, and it kind of helped you during the day in terms of your trading strategies in many respects. But I have to say that I don't think this is just unique to Athena Trade or necessarily unique to people in crypto. But for the most part, we are so positive, we are so optimistic about this technology that you're sitting really in a room with 10 to 15 people who are all bulls. I mean, we are perma-bulls. We're wearing it on our sleeves. We wear it proudly. And when you say something, and again, by my very nature, I tend to be more of a contrarian because I was a long gamma trader, right? So the market would go up, I'd be selling into it. The market would go down, I'd be buying into it. So for me, my personality sometimes is at odds with the perma-bull status at some of the crypto facilities that I visit. So I would say that it's definitely a long only kind of mentality. Although there are one or two of us that are like, hey man, trees don't grow to the sky. We need a pullback for things to be healthy.
So you're surrounded by the hodlers. You're telling me here they're just buying, they're holding on for dear life.
Yes,
and
exactly.
They're not letting go.
It's no different than if you were like a Ford Chevy guy, right? And you're it's the same thing, right? You sometimes find yourself in the company of people who don't agree with your with your mode of transportation, so to speak. But ultimately, we're all motivated by the same thing. We all want to see Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrencies succeed, and it's just no one's really exactly sure how that's going to work.
Yeah, it is interesting to watch ever since we've been really delving into this space in earnest since January when we launched this program. It has been fascinating to interact with that audience and the various players that they're in and see their mindsets. And I always used to joke that gold and the gold bugs were the hardest of hardcores, and if you said anything bearish about gold, they were on you. But the crypto space certainly has their devotees, their legions of adherents who will brook no bearish talk. And so it is kind of interesting to see how all of that plays out. But you're right, as this has kind of grown, as the marketplace has grown and evolved, we have seen more people who are just out there to trade it, don't really have maybe the diehard belief that the early adopters had. And so there's a lot of layers, a lot of strata there within that marketplace. But you're right, there certainly is. And it sounds like you're surrounded by it over there in that trading area. A lot of people who are pretty diehard on the old buy and keep buying, shall we say, Bill front.
We're not all Bitcoin maximalists here by any means, but I would just say, we're surrounded by people that are, attorneys that are trying to maintain a sense of, don't get too excited about the crypto space because they're, like we saw today, Mnuchin talking about, anti-money laundering and know your client rules and following all the rules in order to have a good project. So we have some of those people kind of attenuating the excitement on the project side. But there's Athena Bitcoin, which is, they're an ATM company all over the world. And so to get their perspective is really important. And then, of course, you have the people who are hodlers, right, and own the altcoins who are looking for something to buy for a tenth or a hundredth of a penny, thinking that it might be the next Bitcoin. So you do have a lot of perspectives in terms of the conversation. But, yeah, I mean, everybody here's a hodler, I'd say.
Now let's see what's been going on out here from the rest of the space. Obviously, the options doing decent volume, but not a ton. The term structure out there, it's interesting. It's kind of a little bit changed from recently, where it just so many moves in the near term, as you might expect. The peak for the at-the-money volatility in the term structure right around now. Actually, the contract's expiring on the 19th, so the weeklies. Again, that's mostly gamma, so bear that in mind. I hate to even really call that vol, but we're seeing that around a little bit north of a 120. It was like about a 125 or so. And then it comes off down a little bit into July. You get out to D, it's a mere, a paltry 100 or so out there and add the money implied. So as you might expect, cooler, rational heads prevail. It's kind of like when the VIX futures and the cash get into backwardation and everything's moving around like crazy over there. Then it settles out. I think we're in a little bit of some backward action over here in the crypto, at least in the near term. Until we settle out again, this near-term rally is continuing here at about 10,840 or so here as we continue with the show. Looking here, we talked recently about the interest where people are leaning on the option side of Bitcoin. Are they leaning calls? Are they leaning puts? And usually it's that call-to-put ratio, and usually the call is leading the dance. Remember, that peaked back a few weeks ago on the show, actually about a month ago, on June 17th at about 73.5% calls over puts. So it was all calls all the time. Remember, that was on the march up to around 14,000 or so. Then it kind of flipped where it got down to, it was actually calls of only about 45%. So puts were leading the dance, and it was all puts. Imagine, as you will, of course, as that downside move exacerbated, people wanted puts. Go figure. Now we're kind of at a weird range where it's pretty much almost 50-50. It's about 54.5% on the call side to obviously about 45 or so percent on the put side there. So close to 50-50, which is about as close to that as we've seen in a while here on the call to put / put to call ratio here in Bitcoin land. OI is another one. By the way, all this data I should mention before we keep going, all this data coming courtesy of our friends over there at SKU, SK3W.co. If you're not using it, you really, and you're trading these markets, or if you're at all interested in these markets, or just want to check out what's going on from a volatility perspective or everything else, it literally is kind of the only game in town when it comes to the data out there for all this kind of fun stuff. And if you do that, you can sink your teeth into the SKU, as the name implies, but the volatility, term structure, call, the put, all this other good data. Also open interest. We were talking recently, it set a record of about 635 million a couple of weeks ago on show day. It got down to about 400 million recently. Now it's back up a little bit, up to about 475 million. So that OI tends to follow Bitcoin. In fact, the whole market really follows Bitcoin. That's kind of been one of the big narratives of this movement, is just Bitcoin is leading the dance again, and altcoin is kind of just left in the rearview mirror. I haven't seen what it is today, but I know towards the latter portion of last week, that Bitcoin dominance rate had hit about 65%, which is the highest it has been since about December of 2017. That's, of course, what percentage of overall crypto capitalization is pretty much found and is made up of Bitcoin, and 65% is pretty high. That's showing that, at least on the upside, of course, we saw Bitcoin kind of leading the dance, and the altcoin kind of left to their own devices, kind of middling down, unched. We'll get into them in a little bit, how they're faring, but interesting stuff out there as Bitcoin has kind of been leading the dance, and everything else has kind of been left in its wake to follow suit here. For a while, the people are writing in, and it seems people are very interested in seeing, let's see altcoin come to life. Let's see it challenge Bitcoin for dominance and really take on a life of its own. And it seemed like it was maybe happening there for a while. It was threatening that 50% level. And then that's at least a distant memory. I'll have to, again, coming in to see today and see. That's sure that's come off a bit as Bitcoin has come off a bit. But still, interesting stuff out here. Speaking of interesting stuff, the futures also fairly active today over there on CME coming into right now. Actually, they're about 10,000. They were 10,500 not that long before showtime, now at about 10,885. So nice little swing just in the last hour or so over here. They're still off 850 handles from where they were, but it's a lot better than 1,215 where they were right before showtime to the downside. Seeing decent paper at about 7,000 contracts in that front July contract, and looks like about 600 or so throughout the rest of the term structure. So you're talking, roughly about 35,000 plus coin. Remember, that's a 5X type coin out there, or 5X type contract, I should say. So a lot of interesting things out there. Bill, have you kind of been noting that as well over there in your hodler kingdom over there at Athena? Is it really kind of all Bitcoin all the time, or are people really coming in super hardcore, guns blazing on the altcoin as well?
That's a great question, Mark. I would say while the predominant conversation is Bitcoin, we have a big screen TV, one of these, ones that are like 5 feet wide and 3 feet tall up on the wall. And we have a list of the top 100 cryptocurrencies sorted by liquid market cap from high to low. And so you come in and you see the top ones almost the same every single day, right? It's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin. And then further down the road, it's, Monero and maybe Dash. But then, you'll come in and you expect to look at the old, like the widows and orphans kind of funds, right? These old names that we're all familiar with. And then all of a sudden you see something up on the screen, in particular one called Chainlink. The symbol is LINK. That's up like 843% this year to date. Like Chainlink, where did that come from? Why is it up so much? What are they doing? So, and so you have to go do your homework and find out, well, where did this thing come from? I have never heard of it like a week ago, and now it's in the top 12. Like, how does that happen? It has a market cap of about $1.8 billion. So I would say that, there's so many interesting projects out there that, again, you'll come in and you'll see a token in the top 15, top 20, and you say, hey, what the heck are they doing that caused that price to go up? And then you do your homework, right? You do this reverse research where you find the token, you find their website, you try to read the white paper to see what's going on, because there are people who are on the inside, namely technologists, people who are really into this space, who have already have a stake in a position in the token. What's going on that makes it rally so much. So it's always like a new day when a cryptocurrency that you've never heard of, or project you've never heard of, makes it on the top 15 line. But then again, that's what makes the space so interesting. It's like, what if you're looking at the S&P 500 and numbers 15 through 25 were companies you never even heard of before in terms of market cap? It's like, hey, we gotta look into this. What's going on? Is this the next Bitcoin? Is this the next Ethereum? Is it the next Ripple? So the altcoin, it isn't that there's so many people here hodling altcoins that they're rallying and shouting about the ones that they currently own. It's like, ooh, here's a new one I haven't heard of. Let me look into it. Is it worth buying? So that's kind of fun.
Now, that is fun. It kind of reminds me of the old days on the SIBO where everyone was always whispering in your ear about some new garbage pink sheet stock, right? That was going to be the next big hot thing. And I don't think any of them ever worked out. I dumped a lot of money on some garbage pink sheets.
Not one.
Not a single one. They're all. I probably still have them on an account somewhere, all trading a fraction of a cent. But this Chainlink is certainly an interesting one. I'm looking at it right now. It's trading $2.75 right now, listeners, off about 20 cents, about 7 cents on the day. But it's had quite a turbulent just a couple of weeks here. I was trading about $1 north of that not too long ago, about $3.75. It's since come off. So yeah, it's been a fascinating one to watch. That's why I like when you come on, Bill, because you always have these fun esoteric. What's that gaming one you always like talking about as well?
That's the HXRO. Again,
yes,
not a recommendation. I just like the guys in the project that they're doing. It's a gaming platform that uses a decentralized token to play games. It's kind of like Jesse Livermore's old book, The Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, where you would walk into a business and you would basically bet on the next uptick or downtick. And so with Hero Token, you're betting on like these 10-minute swings of whether the price that you choose, at the end of 10 minutes, if it's above and you selected the opportunity to win above your price, you win part of the pot. If it's below, you lose. So it's kind of this not quite binary, but it's kind of like a binary guess over 10 minutes. Like, I like the project. I love the graphics. They're old floor traders who are running the project. So there's like this natural connection, camaraderie when they come up here and present. There's and again, Mark, there's people very passionate here. Like, you will come in and somebody will be talking about Raven Coin or Grin Coin. And you're like, well, what the heck is that? And some people are like, well, it's the next best thing since sliced bread. And other people, it's like, oh, no, I'm not allowed to use vulgarity on the show here. But, they'll just spew a stream of swear words on what a junky project it is. So it all just kind of depends on your personality and how you believe the altcoin space is. I am by no means a Bitcoin maximalist. There's some really interesting projects out there, and frankly, it's just darn interesting to see the stuff that's going on and what people are doing. Like, it's this tool, right? It's like a toolbox with almost an unlimited programmable number of solutions that can be solved with with blockchain and distributed ledger technology. And that's why I'm in this space. I just find it really interesting.
It's funny. I think I'm going back in my memory banks here. I can't remember the last time. Many years it has been since someone has quoted to me The Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, that old markets book. And yet now you're the second person in the last hour and a half, Bill, to quote that book to me all of a sudden on the network. So
wow.
I don't know why everyone has it on the brain today, but apparently maybe it's on sale on Prime Day. I don't know. But either way, yeah, you're the second person after many years of no one bringing it up. Second person in the last two shows back to back, both brought up that independently, which is kind of interesting. We'll get into altcoin in a little bit. We kind of got sucked into the altcoin universe here. Let's wrap up on Bitcoin before we keep on rolling into more altcoin. A lot of fascinating things going on. But the big news, we kind of had to bury the lead last week, Bill, because there's so much trading going on. But some of the big news in the Bitcoin front is, of course, our friends there, ERISX. They've been on the network here a few times. They're, of course, one of those firms out there fighting and grappling to kind of be the new, effectively the new CME for the crypto space, the new crypto derivatives exchange of choice. A lot of firms are trying to do that. The Seed guys, those guys, many others, they've all been on here in various capacities over the past year. So go check out the archives of this show or indeed our interview show where they pretty much all appeared and all made their case for how they're going to take the crypto derivatives world by storm. But what a lot of them have been waiting for is, of course, the regulators to give them that stamp of approval. Remember, you can do whatever you want in, overseas warrants and everything else like that. If you want to play here in the listed regulated space, you got to get that stamp of approval. And looks like ERISX got it, at least for, they were waiting to the CFTC to approve them settling settling into the physical is kind of the next wave. It's what everyone seems like they're waiting for. Backed, ERISX, all of those are trying to get into that space, and they're all waiting for that green light, that seal of approval. They finally got it last Monday with the CFTC, the permission, the authority to settle their futures into the actual Bitcoin. So that's kind of what everyone's been waiting for now. They have that green light. Again, that's just regulatory approval. Doesn't seem like they have a firm time frame in place in terms of, okay, we got the green light, so bam, flip the switch, we're ready to go. But they're saying, I think, that just the ever nebulous later this year is when they're going to be live with these actual contracts. So it will be nice to see more players in the listed, regulated derivatives venue. More players there is good. It brings more attention to it. It brings more volume to the space. It brings more eyeballs to the space. And, of course, from our perspective, the more underlyings out there, the better chances we're going to have some freaking options finally on a venue that most of you can trade without having to tunnel in through a VPN. So how nice is that? Bill, was that big news over in your neck of the woods last week at ERISX, finally getting that green light from the CFTC to move ahead?
Yeah, it definitely came up in conversation, Mark. I'm not going to lie to you. But it's kind of hard to say whether or not people are like all into the ERISX. People are still talking about Binance. People are talking about the BXC, which is a Chicago-based exchange. People are still talking about the CME Group and CBOE. So it isn't like it wasn't like a thunderstorm of excitement on the ERISX side. We're still very new in this game, and still waiting for more clarity on the regulatory front. I mean, up until Mnuchin's conversation today on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I've always kind of thought of Bitcoin as a piece of property, right? It's property, which is the way the Internal Revenue Service kind of treats it. And then it's also a currency, and like, well, what is it? Is it communication? Is it currency? Is it property? And so I still think that there's a lot of regulatory clarity is needed before at least the people that I'm close to are getting super excited about a particular platform that might permit the trading of digital assets and increase the user experience.
Yeah, you're right. It is in many ways the Wild West for the platforms, the new quote-unquote exchanges, call them what you will, particularly on the crypto derivative side. I'm looking at my desk here that's just littered with business cards from all those various firms. Some new ones announcing themselves recently, like True Digital Holdings. They're going to be the new players in the Bitcoin derivatives front. So every time you go anywhere in Chicago or anywhere else at these institutional-oriented events, I lose track of how many people I meet who say they're going to be the next XYZ exchange for crypto derivatives. It does seem like from a capitalization perspective, ERISX has a bit of a leg up on those. They have backing from TD Ameritrade and some other big names. So that certainly helps. And that, of course, is a lot of the pieces of the pie when it comes to getting flow on these venues. Listeners is, of course, having buy-in and stakeholders from other parts of the marketplace, order flow providers, liquidity providers. It does seem like they get that over there at ERISX, whereas some others are resistant to that model. I get it in spirit, but that's the way things have been done. And so if you want to get order flow and liquidity and everything else, you have to give them a little bit of a skin in the game, unfortunately. And that seems like ERISX gets that, so that'll probably help them with a little bit of a leg up at the front. But again, it's anyone's game. The folks backed and ICE probably get that as well, I would imagine. Coming from the Iceland, they have indeed sold pieces of Amex and things to other firms out there, so they get that has to be done. So it is interesting. It's a horse race, which is always fun. It's not just one player. There are many. They are legion. And speaking of what's legion, the freaking altcoin universe is legion. So let's get into it a little more. Let's break down the old altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, let's get altcoin. Talked a little bit there already there at the top of the show. Couldn't help ourselves talking some of these other fun coins. Link, HXRO, Bill's favorite. But let's see here. Let's look before we get into all the altcoin. Let's just break down the market cap again. As I say every week, take these numbers with a big grain of salt. I think percentage-wise, they're probably going to be about the same, but overall market cap value-wise, probably going to be some big changes when they start really parsing these a little bit. Number one, still, of course, Bitcoin, $193 billion out there. Numero dos ETH, still about 24, almost 25 billion. XRP number 3 took a big hit this week. We'll get to that in a little bit. 12.6 billion there. Number 4, Litecoin, 5.75 billion, and number 5, Bitcoin Cash, about 5. This is a weird chart because it's showing $5.8 billion for Bitcoin Cash, which should put it at number 4. But c'est la vie. Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash neck and neck for, let's say, the number 4/5 spot here on our top 5. And it's kind of been, like we mentioned at the top of the show, a bit of a crushing, I think to use a technical term, out there for most of these since our last program. It's also worth noting some of the people who we talked to on this, who on our network and on our website, who contribute on the crypto side, including they've been on the show in the past, Crypto Patterns guys. They're saying that this is just a dangerous time for altcoin in general, this time of year, those of you who look at seasonality, because if you look at the history, it shows altcoin crashes a lot worse than Bitcoin has during this time of year. Again, we're kind of in somewhat uncharted territory because these levels and hitting them, moving to them this quickly, we haven't really seen before. We've seen these levels before. We've seen, obviously, 13 to 14,000 before in Bitcoin, but getting to them and then giving them up this quickly in the span of a couple of sessions or intraday, probably not. But still, if past is prologue, then the altcoin tends to get beaten up a little bit worse than Bitcoin this time of year. And that's kind of been what we've been seeing over the course of the past week. A bit of a drudging, even though it has picked up a little bit. Let's start with our old friend XRP, because it's actually worse since the show. Bitcoin's been rallying about 300, 400 handles, whereas, XRP has actually given up more. We talked about Ripple so many times that it was just locked in this range, right? 31, 32 cents, maybe 33 on the upside. If it got really crazy, up to 35, 36. And it seemed like it broke through that finally, got up into the 40-cent range, 41, 42. It looked like maybe the being locked in the 30-cent range was a distant memory. Well, nope. It gave all that up and then some on this past week. Remember, it was hovering right around 40 again. Last show was kind of locked there for a couple of weeks, but again, it wasn't giving it up. Gave it all up this week down to about 32, actually below 32, 31 and a half now coming into the latter portion of the show here. So we're right back where XRP was for quite a long time. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come. Remember, people have been talking for a while about are there headwinds for the unique challenges for Ripple versus other coins? There's a lot of competitors, a lot of players in that payments arena, and maybe some of that coming to bear here as XRP feeling the weight this week. ETH not alone in that as well. ETH also taken a big hit this week. Remember, it was well north of 300 the last time we all chatted about it, and now down to 232. It gained 2 handles since the show started. It was at 230 and a half, now 232 and a half, but still off about 70 odd handles from our last show. So again, it can't all be bullish runs, but this one particularly bearish to the downside, as a lot of this given up a lot of the upside that they've picked up over the past couple of weeks, I should say. A lot of that going away just in the course of the past week. Litecoin, another one that's been kind of just leading the charge percentage-wise to the upside all year. You look at any given week, any given month, and Litecoin was leading the dance, giving up a lot of its upside this week as well. It was well over 100 on our last show, around 113 to 120 in that range. This week, 91, almost 92 right now going into a latter portion of the show. So gave up a lot back into the double digits again from the triple digits. Still, of course, up on the year, still looking good, but gave up a lot of that nice upside it had on the certainly in the last month and change in terms of that really sharp cliff, sharp just explosion there to the upside. Bitcoin Cash, talking about explosions, exploded up and exploded right back down here as well, down nearly 100 points from the recent levels we had on the show, and down almost 200 from those highs around like 472 or maybe a little bit north of that. I don't have exactly where it topped out, but it was after around those levels there. Down and coming to showtime, it was at 315. It's up a bit. It's up about 8 handles since the start of the show, too. At 323 right now, so getting a little bit of that back, but still about $1.50 off from its highs of not too long ago. So a precipitous drop in Bitcoin Cash, and even from our last show, it was around 411 or so. So it's about 100 handles or so from there as well. So, yeah, Bill, I know a lot of people coming into your offices there are into the altcoins. What's it been like with all the altcoin folks as we're seeing kind of some bloodletting out here this week, sir?
Yeah, I think some of the people that were buying some of the alt tokens at the beginning of the year and maybe even toward the end of last year, some of them are a little bit frustrated that they haven't taken some profits. Because some of the tokens are up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% from the low. So, if it was Netflix or Apple or Facebook or General Electric or any other company, they would have taken their profits already, Mark. But there's always that, again, it's the pink sheet mentality that you mentioned before, that you buy a token for a couple of pennies. You want it to get to $3 or $4 a share, a token, or a price or more before, because you want to ring the register, right? That's kind of what we're in this. These are big moves. Nothing in the S&P 500 is up 800%, except maybe Beyond Meat, right? The crazy vegan meat alternative. I mean, their IPO is like $25 a share. I think it went to in the high $200, $300 a share. I think I'm not even sure now that I'm going to have to go back and look, but this is definitely a speculator's game. It's a speculator environment, and again, your connection, your comparison to the pink sheet world is so spot on. And so also, maybe it's the summer blues. We see the market making new highs in the S&P 500, and it's usually like nobody buys this kind of market in the summer, right? It's kind of sleepy. It's quiet, and it's nice outside, and little by little, you're making these new highs. And so I think maybe some of the little bit of a rally we saw in altcoins recently could be just part of that the summer doldrums, like not that much liquidity. People are away on vacation. So any kind of, you almost had to have your orders in ahead of time to get filled because you're not going to get this sustained bull market that gives you, you can sell some of your stake today, you sell a little bit tomorrow, and then maybe some next week. So I don't know. Mark, it's hard to say. People are probably a little bit frustrated they didn't take a few chips off the table.
Yeah, I think it would only be human if you were feeling that at this point. Speaking of humans, let's bring on some of you humans and see what your questions are. It's time for your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto questions. This is the portion of the show where you guys ask your questions and we try to find the answers for you here. We have a joking little flash poll up here now, listeners. We were just joking with, of course, Bill at the top of the show and some of our other programs say it is indeed Prime Day, that great annual holiday of consumerism. And we asked you guys, are you guys making purchases out there on Prime Day? Could be on Amazon, could be on other outlets, or are you just not into it at all? And right now it's exactly even coming into the end of crypto here with about 50% yes. Yes, I bought only on Amazon. No votes for any other outlets. And then 50% for nope. So there you go. If you're interested in such things, a silly little fun one to kick off the week, have at it. We asked you a serious question last week. We said, hey, the market's hitting new highs. Equity volatility eroding yet again. Where are you guys getting your vol fix these days? We gave you 4 different categories to contemplate. Energy, of course, WTI or USO. We don't judge. Whatever you like to trade out there. They certainly have all been very volatile of late. The metals is another one. Gold vol is back after a long period of pretty much nothing. Gold vol, silver vol, others are kind of back and actually interesting to watch again. Crypto, also, we don't judge. It could be Bitcoin, ETH, could be some of these more esoteric altcoin, whatever you like to trade, that one out there. Or are you staying with what brought you to the dance? You're staying with the index vol. And Bill, it was surprising. Actually, the metals took it at the end of the day with 38%, followed by 24% for energy, 21% for crypto, so in the third place, and then only 17% for index. I guess you can look at this as a glass half full or glass half empty if you're a crypto guy. You can look at it as a glass half empty is kind of like they only got third place, but on the flip side, they beat VIX. So in a volatility poll, that's not doing too bad, is it, Bill?
No. I mean, I know. So again, I always feel like half of my conversation has to be regulatory disclaimers because I am a state-registered investment advisor in Illinois. But, you're bringing up the precious metals like gold and silver and some of the energy complex. There's some interesting, covered call writing plays to do in some of those exchange-traded funds, some interesting plays set up in the individual names. And I think that also warrants our attention because there's some things that you can do in our, self-directed 401ks and IRAs. There are some things that you do in your cryptocurrency trading side. But, Mark, you might remember this famous saying from the trading floor, and now people over here at Athena Trade are saying it along with me, and that is the 3 richest guys were shoulda, coulda, and woulda. And you're going to find that the same mentality exist whether you're trading GLD and SLV or, the junior miners, or you're trading the cryptocurrency. The same rules apply, same rules of risk management. Don't fall in love with your position, and make sure that you've got a tight stop loss, or you cover your risk when your premium objectives have been met. So the same rules apply regardless of whether you're in the exchange traded side or the cryptocurrency side. And I really think it's great that you bring all these kind of asset classes to your podcast. I think it's really important.
Well, we try, and let's see. Let's try to get some folks here with their questions. Let's see. First up, we've got Endorse. Endorse wants to know why is Chicago the big Bitcoin trading hub now? It's interesting. Bill and I have been joking all show about kind of that old school trading history here, but Chicago has that and has that in spades, in particular from the derivatives perspective. So options and futures. If you want stock, you usually have to go back east, and fixed income maybe back east to New York. But for derivatives, Chicago is, and for the foreseeable future will be the mecca of all things derivatives trading. And quite frankly, there was a lot of ecosystem here that was kind of laying fallow. We weren't doing as much big numbers on the derivative side as we used to be. So I always say when crypto really kind of landed with around, certainly with a vengeance in 2017, but even before then, people started to turn on to it here and say, hey, they were all waiting for the next big thing to really kind of light up their tapes again and turn those machines back on, as we used to say there on the floor. And then crypto landed, and all of a sudden there was a market that wasn't super regulated to death yet, wasn't super tight. It was still wide. You could trade it if you had some experience and some savvy. There was danger, obviously risk there, but there was an opportunity there. And that seems like it really was what turned people on. Bill, is that kind of your takeaway as well? What are your thoughts? I mean, you're there in the hub there, in the trading hub. What is it that's making Chicago so uniquely suited to become the Bitcoin trading mecca these days?
Mark, I think you're spot on. I mean, you might remember that, one of the reasons we're having this conversation today was when you and I were out on Michigan Avenue having a cup of coffee on the same day of the flash crash, and I think it was May in 2010.
Yeah, easy to remember. It's kind of hard to forget that one.
Right. So we were already talking about the changes, the underlying changes in infrastructure, on the exchanges and how hard it was to make money. We had increased technology costs, increased regulatory environment. We were kind of uncertain as to what the future held. And boy, if you and I would have bought Bitcoin instead of Starbucks, we wouldn't even be having this conversation now. We'd be so well off. But really, this is, Chicago its roots are in trading. We have the holy trinity here of trading exchanges, the Chicago Board of Trade, the Chicago Mercantile, and then the Chicago Board Options Exchange. This is all within a 1-block radius of the financial district, and so this is all we've ever really done. So it doesn't matter whether it's derivatives or bonds or pork bellies, corn, wheat, beans. I mean, Chicago has already laid that infrastructure 150 years ago, and I think that makes us so poised and so ready because we have all the tools already in place to just simply bring over a different stock feed, like a different data feed, and we can begin doing the same things with all these cryptocurrencies as we did with regulated assets. It's like a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Does seem to be heading that way. So yeah, if you want to do a little bit of slinging of the old crypto, chances are you're either here or you're interacting with a company that is here, based here, which is always fun to see. So yeah, Chicago taking very much a lead on the crypto derivatives and indeed the spot trading side over here. Let's see here. How about this one from LN3? Oh, LNN3, I should say to be precise. How do the current Bitcoin options markets stack up to the exchange-traded markets for stock options like Apple and Tesla? We've touched on them before. I hit on the top of the show. Volume-wise, places like your Deribits and your BitMEXs actually do probably more paper than you think, and so they're not like they're tiny venues by any means. But also, as comparing it to something like in your comparison in Apple, that's not really a comparison. Apple is the volume leader most days out there for individual equity options, so nothing's going to come close. Even the Tesla is in the top 5 or top 10 on most days from a volume perspective. So comparing the OTC or indeed the even exchange quote unquote traded stuff on a Deribit or BitMEX to an Apple that trades throughout multiple exchanges and venues here, in the U.S. at least. It's a different beast. I wouldn't put it in those categories. It's nowhere close to that. But it does. I think I would put it in the cautious category of when you check it out and you look at some of the volume and some of the open interest charts and everything. I think it does more than you would expect. So I would put it in like a not quite super active but decent little individual equity option. That's not it's not super tight because it's not super liquid. So it's not like an Apple and doesn't do a ton of paper, but it does maybe more than you'd expect. You think that's a fair comparison, Bill?
Yeah, I totally agree, Mark. Yes, it's one of those quiet things we'll probably see slow and steady. We want a strong market. We want good participants, and so to be able to keep an eye on that slow and steady growth in the futures and options, it helps with those companies that are actually doing lending on Bitcoin. So there are a few companies that, again, are Chicago-based, that if you give them your Bitcoin, they will do a 50% loan to value on that, so that you can still maintain ownership of your token, right, of your asset, and you can borrow money against cryptocurrency. And then those companies, what do? They go out and they hedge that in the options market and in the futures market. So again, the more that the industry of blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies begins to grow, then the more you're going to see these people seek ways of using financial instruments, traditional financial instruments, in a way to be able to hedge and manage that risk. And once you can do that, then it's like Katie bar the door. That's when you can get this explosive growth in futures contracts and in Bitcoin trading, is when there's a way of kind of hedging the unknown, right? It's the Chicago Board Option Exchange was definitely on the right path and was growing slowly. But when they came out with put options, and you could then hedge a neutral trade with calls and puts, or with stock and puts, then it was you could take more leverage. You could almost afford to take more risk because you had a way of laying it off someplace else. So these kind of tools are very important. And again, as players come to the industry, we're going to see the spread widths narrow, activity, open interest, volume all pick up, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, you're right. We had the CEO of Drawbridge on the network not too long ago. Check it out, listeners. You can see how just completely locked the Bitcoin lending market is to the actual options liquidity that they can get, OTC and otherwise. It's a bit of a fascinating connection. Check out that conversation. Let's just end on this one, Bill, because we have to kind of come to a close, even though it has been a fascinating conversation. Let's end on this comment here from Tom. I think we can all get behind what he's saying. He says Bitcoin moved from 1,000 to about 20,000, then back down to 3,000, then back up to 14,000, all without any real options available on it. Damn. I could see where this guy's come up. Obviously, there are options available. We kind of just listed some of the venues out there, so you can do your BitMEXs and your Deribits. But for a lot of you in the U.S., that's not really an option. Pun intended. You have to tunnel in with a VPN. They're not really the same kind of regulated venues you're used to here. So a different beast. So if you want, a pure, hey, go on the SIBO or an Amex or a MyX and buy this option, hit this, lift that offer. It hasn't really been available to you. So from that perspective, yeah, I think Bill and I both concur with that. I think I certainly thought, I know our audience did. We took a poll back at the beginning of 2018, right when Bitcoin was hot and heavy. The futures had just launched. It was January of 2018, and it was still around 20,000. Everyone was super excited. So it seemed like an option was a no-brainer. It was coming. I seemed like the laggard. I said, it'll be by Q2. All of our audience was, no, Q1, definitely. And here we are, a year and a half later. And not only do we not have them on the CME one, but the CBO's out of the game. So, yeah, it's been an interesting, somewhat frustrating run. I think a lot of us would have wished we had these earlier. But c'est la vie, Bill. I think you probably can get behind what Tom's saying here, can you not?
Yeah, I do. But you have to remember, you don't have to buy one whole Bitcoin. Yes, the options definitely give you leverage. But, remember, you can buy $100 of Bitcoin. You can buy $1,000 of Bitcoin. You can theoretically buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. So the returns that you have earned from 3,000 to 20,000 back down to 6,000 up to 14,000 or whatever price action you want to quote. The truth is, it's still, you have to buy at least one share of Amazon, right? If you buy one share of Amazon, a minimum number, that's like almost $2,000. You can buy Bitcoin down to 9 decimal places. So don't let the fact that options don't, if you're a speculator, don't let the fact that options don't really exist yet discourage you from trading an asset that's very volatile. You can still buy whatever dollar amount of Bitcoin you want, whether you use an exchange to trade or you do the Bitcoin ATM machine or however you want to do it. The swings are still very exciting. So, don't get too caught up in the fact that there isn't options and more leverage, because the volatility, you almost don't. If you're not happy with a 300% or 400% move in Bitcoin, then I don't know what to say.
I like having you on, Bill, because you always bring that optimistic outlook to the show. Unfortunately, that music means got to draw to a close this week. It's been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank all of you out there for joining us, and I want to thank Bill for joining us as well. And Bill, if they want to catch up with you and see what you're working on these days in the crypto arena, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Always connect with me on LinkedIn. Bill Uliveri. You can call me at 847-686-4800, or feel free to visit the website at cenaclecapital.com.
There you go. Cenaclecapital.com is the place to learn more. And on behalf of Bill and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for tuning in. I know the schedule for this one has kind of moved around a little bit, so thank you for being patient with us, trying to keep it at this time for you so you know when to tune in live and, of course, after the fact on all the devices of choice. And we'll see you back here next week for more of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.